Hello and welcome to Love Thy Lawyer, where we talk to real lawyers about their lives in and out of the practice of law, how they got to be lawyers, and what their experience has been. I'm Louis Goodman, the host of the show, and yes, I'm a lawyer. Nobody's perfect. Seth Steward served in the San Francisco District Attorney's Office under Kamala Harris and George Gascón. He's tried over 70 cases to jury verdict. A marathon runner, he completed Boston in 2014. Seth joined the United States Air Force and the California Air National Guard. He served as a flight engineer on a combat search and rescue helicopter and completed tours of duty in both Iraq and Kenya. He has taught at Merritt College and at Oakland Technical High School. He served as Chief of Staff to Oakland City Council member Dan Kalb. He is currently running for District Attorney of Alameda County. Seth Steward, welcome to Love Thy Lawyer.
Good afternoon. Happy to be here.
I'm very happy to have you here. I've had the privilege of interviewing the other three candidates for District Attorney, and I'm happy to make your acquaintance. I know a couple of the candidates pretty well. I've never met you before, so it's a pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you, too. Thanks for having me on the show.
Where are you talking to me from right now?
This is my house. This is where I live. I live in Oakland, West Oakland.
And are you working these days, or are you just running for district attorney?
I'm working. I'm actually had to take a chunk out of my day to make this all work. So yeah, I'm definitely working. It's an interesting balance. It's actually not the easiest thing to do, but yeah, we do our best to make it all happen.
Well, having run for office while I was working, I know exactly what you're talking about and how difficult it is to juggle those responsibilities. So what sort of work are you doing right now? Who are you working for, or what sort of work are you doing?
So I am the Chief of Staff for Oakland City Council member Dan Kalb. And in that role, we do a lot of things in terms of drafting legislation, reaching out to constituents, addressing issues and concerns.
Well, let me stop you right there then.
Right.
How much staff does a council member have who's an Oakland City Council member?
It's fairly small. There are four of us that work there, and one of them is part-time, three of us full-time.
Councilmember Kalb is my council member, so
All right.
Thank you for your service.
I was going to say, if you have any questions or issues, feel free to call the office, and we'll do our best to take care of it.
Where are you from originally?
I grew up in Portland, Oregon, is where I grew up. I'll say, except for third and fourth grade, where I was in Alameda, California.
Did you go to high school in Portland?
Yes, I did. I went to Benson Tech, which is a public high school there in Portland. Absolutely.
What did you do in high school?
Well, I graduated, which is the most important thing.
Yeah.
But I majored. They had majors in my school. Now, my technical school, it doesn't mean tech like the way we talk about now, like Twitter or Facebook or something like that. It means tech like you could graduate there and be an ASE certified mechanic, for example, or aviation mechanics, where I did electronic engineering, which are things like transistors and conductors and learning how all of that stuff works. That was my major. There was also a radio major. You could be a medical assistant coming out of Benson. There's a number of different types of positions.
Now, after you graduated from Benson, where'd you go to college?
I went to Occidental College in Los Angeles, California. I played soccer and ran track there, which I also did in high school.
Occidental is quite a different circumstance than being in Portland, Oregon, I would imagine.
It is. Occidental is in Eagle Rock, which is the neighborhood there. It's right in between Pasadena and Glendale, and it's totally different. The weather's different. The geography is different. Going to college is totally different. Everything's different. Yeah, everything was different.
Now, at some point, you graduated from Occidental, and you went to law school. Did you take some time off between college and law school?
I did. I had a 4-year break between school, as it were. I was a Coro Fellow out of college here in the Bay Area. After that, I started working in the San Francisco mayor's office, and I worked there for about 3 years until I went off to law school.
When did you first start thinking about law school, and why?
I didn't totally know what I was going to do with my life, but I was working in the mayor's office when I made a decision to go to law school. It's actually the same reason I am running for district attorney. I want to make communities safer and more just. It was the short answer. The longer answer is I was in a community meeting, and I was giving this presentation at the police station there at Turk and Fillmore Street and having a conversation with people, and I explained what the program was, all it entailed, etc. I thought it was great in terms of trying to move the ball forward. An older woman, an older African-American woman came up to me and she said, what are you doing about the death of my grandson? I didn't have a good answer, and that bugged me. I wanted to be able to provide her a better answer. So I went to law school. I became a prosecutor.
So when you went to law school, did you have prosecution in mind as a career goal?
I did. I mean, I thought about potentially. I considered a criminal law was where what made sense to me. I thought a little bit about being a defense attorney because I thought that also made sense. But prosecution was where I ended up, and I was that's where my focus was. Absolutely.
Where'd you go to law school?
George Washington Law School in Washington, D.C.
Now that's another big move, going from the West Coast to really a school that feels like it's sitting at the center of the universe in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's Foggy Bottom is a pretty interesting neighborhood. It's right next to the World Bank, right next to IMF. I mean, a couple of blocks from the White House, the law school is. So it's a pretty impressive place to go and to think about law and to learn about law. And it was a great experience. I love Washington, D.C. Absolutely. Now,
at some point, you ended up back in California at the San Francisco District Attorney's Office, and you also had a stint in the United States Air Force. I'm wondering if you could just kind of set up the timeline for those two things.
Yes, absolutely. So I was hired to work for Kamala Harris at the time while she was the district attorney in San Francisco. And so that job was great. I absolutely loved it. And I had an opportunity. There was a transition there. George Gascón became the district attorney, and I was still there, and I still was having a great time. I had an opportunity to go back to school. I applied for and got into a master's in public administration program at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. So I moved to Boston for a year. And that program was great. It was outstanding. So I was able to take a leave of absence from my job. It was in 2012, 2013. In April of 2013, April 15th of 2013, Boston in the state of Massachusetts has a big event. It's called Patriots Day. It's also called Marathon Monday because it's the same day that they run the Boston Marathon. Usually there is also a Boston Red Sox game happening. And so it's a pretty exciting holiday. Two men that year decided to blow up the Boston Marathon.
We all remember.
And so when that happened, I decided to run the 2014 Boston Marathon and join. I was old at the time. I was in my mid-30s. Kind of old to be joining the military, but I did. I signed up to be a flight engineer on a combat search and rescue helicopter, and that's what I've been doing part-time for the last 8 years. So are you still doing that? I just got out in January. So I just finished. Yeah, just finished. It's a little bit bittersweet. It's something that I miss, and I think I'm going to always miss. How did you make the connection to get into the San Francisco District Attorney's Office? Oh, so I applied. I mean, I literally just applied when I was a summer. Let me think here. I think it was a 2L summer. My 2L summer year. I interned there. And I literally just walked in and said, "Hey, can I intern? Do you need anybody? You need anybody to do any extra help around?" And they said, "Yeah, we'll take you." And so I was there for a month. I actually split my summer. So for any law students listening to this, I split my summer between the Manhattan DA's office and the San Francisco DA's office. So I didn't know where I was going to go, but I highly recommend if you have an opportunity and you're thinking about things, if you can split your summer, it was a good opportunity for me. So you were at the DA's office for a couple of years, and then you went
back to Boston to do this fellowship. Is that correct?
It was a full-on degree program, but because it was for older people, they called it the mid-career master's program in public administration. So I got a master's degree out of it and met a lot of people, learned a ton, and had a great time.
And then you decided you were going to join the Air Force.
Right, which was hard because I was trying to do that and keep my job. So I was able to, but it was not an easy thing. I mean, I was definitely gone for times. I went to Iraq, I went to Kenya, and then I was also gone for trainings before that. And so there were parts of the office where I disappeared for a little while. And then I would come back and try cases and get assigned to a unit and do all of that stuff. And so then I would go back to being in a member of the Air Force. The way the Guard works, it's similar to a reserve status in terms of like it's 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year kind of thing. And so doesn't take the place of a full-time job.
But you did spend some time on active duty when you served overseas.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What was that like?
War I think it's different for each person. I think it's a hard thing to generalize, but there are definitely some things that I think are the same no matter where you are. My mission is great. What we do is combat search and rescue. You're in a helicopter, and it's your job to rescue people.
You've had a very varied career doing a number of things. You're obviously an extremely talented guy. What do you really like about being involved in practicing law?
What's great about practicing law is to me you're solving and you're doing your best to try to make sure that the world is a better place every single day. It should be better. It should be a better place because of the stuff you did that day.
Would you recommend the law to a young person thinking about a career choice?
Absolutely. But I would also say that it's also person specific, and I think that there's enough things about the law that are interesting. I think a lot of people would find it a good career choice, absolutely, because the law covers everything. Everything that we do, there's a law covering it, and so it's worth, I think, thinking. But if somebody wants to be an entrepreneur, you could definitely be a lawyer. If somebody wants to really focus on, white collar crime, or if they want to get into mergers and acquisitions, I mean, there's all kind of stuff that you can do as an attorney.
What about a military career?
I think it's great. It was great for me. It was great both personally and professionally. Being in the Air Force in particular is a wonderful opportunity to serve your country, to do something bigger than yourself. And I'll say just briefly the motto for Air Force Rescue is these things we do that others may live. That means something to me, and it's going to mean something to me for the rest of my life. And I think that type of thing, when you give yourself to something bigger than who you are, to an idea, to morals and principles that you believe in, and you put your life on the line for it, that holds some value.
Do you think that having taken some time off between college and law school helped you really focus when you were in law school? Absolutely.
Absolutely. For me anyway, I definitely needed some time away, and having a chance to have a break is a great benefit. I always tell everybody that I talk to, if they're thinking about going to law school, if they can take at least a year gap or more, it's great to be able to. I'll tell you why this is important.
Please.
Lawyers need good judgment.
True.
There's this funny joke, but it makes sense, right? The way you get good judgment is through experience, and the way you get experience is through bad judgment, right? It's kind of funny, and it's also kind of true. It's hard to have really good judgment at 22 years old. It's really hard. And if all you did was go straight through law school, it's really hard to develop judgment once you're already a practicing lawyer and you're trying to figure out what this case is worth. If you've had some outside experiences, you can use those experiences to help build your judgment.
Well, how is actually practicing law as a district attorney met or different from your expectation?
I would say I didn't really know what it was going to be like, except for watching maybe Law and Order or something like that before I went to law school. But once I got to law school and I was able to both intern at the San Francisco DA's office, intern at the Manhattan DA's office, where I met like some of the people that they based the characters on. That was cool. And so once I did those things, I had a much better idea about what to expect coming in the door because I'd already done it.
You're currently running for district attorney. When did you start thinking about that as a career move? Have you always wanted to be an elected district attorney? Have you thought of yourself as an elected official as opposed to someone who's working for the government?
I've always thought about trying to find ways to help people, and I've always thought about trying to find ways to make situations safer and better and more just. Those things have always been true, regardless of what type of job I'm doing. So the current job, for example, I'm working for Councilmember Dan Kolb, and we got some legislation passed banning chokeholds and carotid restraints following the death of George Floyd. I'm always going to find ways to make a difference where I live, to make people safer, to make the community safer, and to make it more just. And I think that regardless of the particular role that I happen to, that's my focus.
Well, what prompted you to get involved at this specific time in this race?
What's happening in Oakland and what's happening in the Bay Area generally, what's happening in Alameda County. And what I mean by that is our current system is failing. It's failing in a number of ways. People don't feel safe. We had 134 murders in the city of Oakland alone last year. The number of freeway shootings have skyrocketed. The types of retail theft that we've seen, whether it's throughout the whole county, whether it's in San Francisco or Walnut Creek or Livermore or Hayward, all of these things are causing huge problems, and it's making people change our behavior. This needs to stop. The policies of the past, the policies that we're living under now, are the ones that have created our current conditions, and we need new ones.
Can you think of a specific policy that you would change?
Be smart on crime and follow the science. That's, to me, the level of data that we have is just, it's unclear, and there's no policy regarding data integrity. And so we don't really know what's actually happening in the DA's office. So how can you do anything or change anything if you don't even know what you currently have?
Yeah, I guess if you can't measure it, you can't change it.
No, you can't.
Well, how's the campaign going? You know, what do you think of campaigning? How about raising money? I'm a former candidate, and I know what it's like.
I would say, well, first off, I think the campaign's going great. We're picking up endorsements. That's going well. Endorsements are a thing, as you know. It's people use it as a proxy, and money. To your second question, people use endorsements and money as proxy to figure out how good is this campaign, how meaningful is it. I can tell you, we raised over $100,000 in the first 2 months of the campaign, and so that's really hard to do. And we're excited about it, and in terms of being able to move forward to bring a message to the people of Alameda County that we're going to have difference. We're going to have responsible, thoughtful change here in the DA's office. We're going to focus on violent crime. We're going to make sure that people have the resources they need. And by people, I mean DAs and investigators and paralegals, et cetera, to be able to do their jobs. Right now, they're short attorneys. We need to staff up and be able to hire as many people as possible to be able to do the job. So that's another thing that I'm also focused on as well.
How much money do you think it's going to take to run a serious campaign countywide for district attorney?
I'd say $300,000, which is a lot of money.
Do you have a 30-second elevator speech?
I don't know if I have a 30-second one, but I might have a solid, maybe, I don't even know, maybe minute or so. Is that?
Well, let's hear the elevator speech. We'll hope that the elevator's moving slowly between the floors.
Sounds good. So, as a longtime Alameda County resident, I can't sit back while our criminal justice system fails to keep us safe, fails to do justice, and fails to keep peace in our community. We need change, and my diverse lived experiences make me the best candidate to bring change to Alameda County. I was raised by a single mother, and there I learned the values of service, excellence, and fairness. Spent 13 years as a prosecutor, handling hate crimes, domestic violence, arson, and while collaborating with alternative courts and diversion programs. I'm a proud Air Force veteran, and the Air Force motto is "These things we do that others may live." I bring that same level of duty and commitment to the district attorney's office. As district attorney, I will prioritize safety. I will stem the rise in violent crime, expand access to alternative courts, address the root causes of crime, hold law enforcement accountable, fight racism and bias, eliminate the death penalty, expand victims' rights.
Well done.
All right.
I think you brought it in at under a minute. What, if anything, would you change about the way the legal system works?
I think we're starting to get into that now, in the sense of the way these alternative courts are working. And so I'd say two things. One, that, and then two, leading outside the courtroom. And I'll have a couple of examples for that. So in terms of the way the legal system works, a lot of it is adversarial, as it should be. But there are times when we need to be collaborative. And alternative courts do a good job of bringing together what would normally be considered adverse parties, along with a case manager and a judge, to try to figure out what's actually the best outcome in a case. And I think that collaborative courts do a really good job because they have lower recidivism rates than the traditional court system. So we know the crime goes down when people go to alternative courts. And so I would definitely expand access to alternative courts. The other thing in terms of changing the system is we also need to change and this is going, I think, a little bit outside your question, but I'm hoping I answer it. We need to change the systems on how people get into the criminal justice system in the first place, right? So we know that one of the best ways to lower the crime rate is increase the high school graduation rate. So how can I, as district attorney, work with the Alameda County Department of Education, Alameda County School Board, the other school boards in town, the Department of Public Health, all of these other what I would call support agencies? How can we support the growth and development of people so they don't become either victims or defendants in the criminal justice system? Absolutely believe in trying to support people further on upstream so we don't have to catch them, as many of them, downstream. I believe in financing trauma counseling, violence prevention programs, job development, educational opportunities, that kind of stuff. Absolutely.
I'm not asking you to make a campaign commitment here, but it has struck me as a practicing attorney, former Alameda County Deputy District Attorney, criminal defense attorney in Alameda County, that other than murder cases, 99% of criminal cases in Alameda County are resolved at some point before going to trial as a result of some sort of negotiation. And whether it's a plea bargain, whether it's a diversion program, whether it is something that happens before going to trial, most cases are resolved that way. And I'm wondering if, as district attorney, you think, or just as Seth, you think that getting away from this adversarial system and trying to use more mediation, more understanding with each other, more work in trying to come up with appropriate negotiations might be helpful going forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd say a couple of things. One of the knocks on the criminal justice system is the concept or the idea of overcharging, that district attorneys may go and charge things that they know they can't really prove, but they do it anyway because they think they might get a better negotiated agreement. And that's the kind of thing that to me is unconscionable. You can never do that. And we need to make sure that doesn't happen. Absolutely cannot happen. It destroys trust in the system and makes it impossible to have fairness. I would also say that working together to achieve an outcome where everybody feels like there's some benefit and there is some value to it, and most importantly, where safety is improved, I think is a wonderful thing. Absolutely.
It has occurred to me that in many ways the judges have become overwhelmed with judicial responsibilities, and I'm wondering if there might be some way to do some sort of collaboration with the district attorney's office, with the judges, to have some sort of mediators, special masters, people who would be involved with the line DAs and the line public defenders and the private bar to be able to talk about and negotiate cases. Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think that
or a good idea generally.
I'm not asking you to make a campaign commitment about this. I'm just like Lewis talking to Seth about this,
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. What I think is interesting, right? So when I was a young attorney, collaborative courts weren't really a thing, right? Diversion wasn't really a thing, and now I think there's 10 or so collaborative courts here in Alameda County. I'd like to add a couple of more neighborhood courts and community courts. Those are great opportunities for people, and it's a chance to where people can really try to figure out what's the best way to move forward, where everybody is safe, people get their cognitive or their emotional needs met, whether it's something that somebody might have a drug problem or a veterans court issue where they're suffering from some type of issue, and be able to get them the services they need, and then also be able to keep people safe all at the same time.
Do you think the legal system is fair?
When I was younger, I saw the riots in Los Angeles, and I lived in Portland, Oregon. I saw them on TV, and I know what happened before that. I saw the video of Rodney King being beaten, and I saw the people that beat him get found not guilty. I also saw, I think 2 years later, a white Bronco driving down the freeway on TV, and a man was accused of killing his wife, and another man that was there, O.J. Simpson, was accused of killing 2 people. And I saw a documentary about it later, just recently, not the movie, but the documentary part. I think it was put on by ESPN or something. And they talked about the defense attorneys making sure that O.J. didn't take his medicine to make it hard to put the glove on, and that they changed all the photos in his house to try to change what the jury's perceptions of O.J. were. Those are the only 2 examples that come to mind when you ask me this question. I would say the other one most recently is Derek Chauvin, and in the Ahmaud Arbery cases, I can tell you, I did not know how those were going to go. I know that some people have really strong opinions, like, oh, of course they were going to find him guilty. I had no idea. None.
I don't think anyone who's tried cases in front of a jury will tell you they have an understanding of what's going to happen, because juries, as you and I well know, can do things that are really unexpected. Yeah. What sort of issues do you think you'll be facing as DA if elected?
I think we're in this interesting time right now where there was this swing towards maybe law enforcement should be doing things differently following the death of George Floyd. And there was all of these arguments happening. And then there's been this huge uptick in crime, unbelievably historic rise in crime, actually. And so the main thing we need to do is make sure that we are doing our jobs to focus on violent crime and make sure that people are safe.
Well, there's a lot of talk these days about so-called woke or progressive DAs, and I'm wondering what your take on progressive as opposed to more traditional philosophies of criminal enforcement and prosecution are.
So I would say that there's some things that we can take from both that are effective in making people safe. And there's things that we can lose, I think, from, at least from traditional that I can think of, traditional prosecution that we can make people safe. I consider myself a progressive DA. I believe that, for example, you shouldn't be able to be free out on bail based on how much money you have. I know the law has just changed on that recently with the Humphrey case, but I would say that it's just important to note that for traditional DAs, if you're a poor person, you're generally in jail pending your case. And if you're a rich person, you're generally not. And so I would say that it's important to be able to try to work on some things that can change the system. Also, we need to be able to prosecute law enforcement, police officers who violate the law. Absolutely. We need to be able to prosecute those folks. And we need to be able to do that independently in an effective, meaningful way and still be able to have relationships with that particular police department. And that's important to be able to balance and have. It's critical that everybody has to know that if you break the law, regardless of whether you're wearing a uniform or you're not wearing a uniform, you're going to get prosecuted the same way. People have to know that. That has to be true.
I want to shift gears here a little bit, Seth. What's your family, personal life been like, and how has practicing law and now running for office affected that or fit in?
It's mostly non-existent. my personal life. I would say that I am in a incredibly wonderful relationship, and she's amazing. She's an incredible woman, and so I do my best to try to balance that stuff. But I would say that balance in this case is usually picking up one thing while you're dropping something else, and then picking up something else and dropping that, and dropping some other thing. That's generally how it works.
So you're not balancing, you're juggling.
Yeah, not well. Not well.
Now, when you're not practicing law and when you're not running for office, I think you probably can remember back to such a time. What sort of recreational pursuits do you have? I know that you were very involved in running at one time.
I do a lot of athletics. I was a coach. I was a boxing coach for a long time. I was an amateur fighter a long time ago, but then I started coaching. I like it. I get a lot out of it. Actually, while I was at Harvard, I was the assistant boxing, and so that was a great experience. I try to coach anytime we get deployed. I usually end up coaching boxing to whoever's there. So that's always fun. I used to play soccer in high school and college, so as many times I get a chance to kick a ball, I like to do that. Yeah, I'm not on a team right now, so I'm looking for a team.
There are 4 candidates running for district attorney of Alameda County now. All 4 are African American. So no matter what happens, we are going to end up with an African American district attorney of Alameda County for the first time. And I'm wondering if you have a comment about that.
It's a wonderful, humbling opportunity to be part of a group of people that are in the process of changing the world.
Let's say you came into some real money, several $1 billion. What, if anything, would you do differently in your life?
That's a lot. That's not millions. That's like, I don't even know who has that. That's like Oprah money, maybe?
It's Oprah money. It's Bezos money. It's, Musk money. I mean, you wouldn't have any trouble paying to run a campaign for district attorney of Alameda County. You wouldn't need to ask for another campaign contribution from anybody.
Well, I'd keep running my race. Absolutely. I'd make sure I'd make sure the rest of my family was okay. That's a lot of money. I would definitely think about creating opportunities for other people. I really like what LeBron James did in terms of creating a school. I think that was amazing. In the school, the amount of resources that he put into it, it was incredible. I'd definitely try to give back in that way to make sure that people who currently don't have educational opportunities and opportunities for success get those opportunities. Absolutely.
Seth, if someone's listening to this podcast, they want to get in touch with you, they want to get in touch with your campaign, they want to learn more about you and your campaign, how can they go about doing that?
Well, thank you so much for asking. They can go to SethStewardForDA.com. It's SethSteward as in Delta, and then FORDA.com. That's my website. You can check it out, read all about what we're doing, what we stand for, who's endorsed us, all that good stuff. If you want to email me, you can email me at info@SethStewardForDA.com.
Seth, is there anything that you want to talk about that we haven't discussed, we haven't covered, that you'd like to put out there?
I want to say it's also critical for the DA to argue for things like, hey, you know what? We need to make sure that, for example, the Pleasanton Mental Health Response Program or the HEART program in Hayward is getting the resources that they need to be successful. We also need to make sure that we fight for resources for disenfranchised communities. We need to make sure that the schools are good, that the parks work, that the public transit works, that people are able to get to and from. Those are the things that are stopping people from being successful, and those are the things that the DA needs to fight for.
Seth Steward, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon on the Love Thy Lawyer podcast. It really has been a pleasure to meet you and to talk with you.
Louis, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
That's it for today's episode of Love Thy Lawyer. If you enjoyed listening, please share it with a friend and follow the podcast. If you have comments or suggestions, send me an email. Take a look at our website at lovethylawyer.com, where you can find all of our episodes, transcripts, photographs, and information. Thanks to my guests, and to Joel Katz for music, Brian Matheson for technical support, Paul Roberts for social media, and Tracy Harvey. I'm Louis Goodman.
Being in a combat search and rescue helicopter is inherently dangerous, and there's always a number of things that can go wrong, and then there's a couple of times where things do go wrong. It does make you question your time, if your time has been well spent, and what you want to do with the rest of it.